In today's video, we are going to talk about somewhat advanced tips, tricks, different things that you might hit when you work with Dual UI Next and when you employ shadcn UI or shadcn registry in your projects. So let's begin with one typical thing that might bring you some unnecessary conflicts when you merge things, when you work with Git and shadcn driven projects. So in Dual UI Next, for example, we have this command for formatting. So it prettifies everything in the src folder, which makes sense, right? It's very practical. Let's run this sort of dry mode yarn format check to see what files it's going to update. And different src registry defaults, so our custom components things are very good, but there's a bunch of files from src components folder. This is exactly the folder where shadcn puts its default components. When you add a button, a text area, as you can see, different other UI primitives from shadcn, they all will go into the src components folder. And the problem is that they might have completely different formatting style. They are still valid, but they do not match the formatting style of your particular project. They might come from different sources. And for example, the formatting styles of Dual UI Next, when you install a component from Dual UI Next, might differ from the prettier styles of your consumer project. So in most cases, it makes a lot of sense to exclude src components from being prettified, because if let's just run it without check and see what's going on here. So it does prettify everything. So 33 changes, yes. And let's take a look at the button view component. That is the default one from shadcn. It marks pretty much every single line as changed because shadcn components use the semicolon-less style of view components. That's why, and our prettifier, the prettifier for Dual UI Next, wants to add semicolon to every line. So that's why you technically have within this script section, pretty much every line gets marked, but functionally nothing has changed. So it creates unnecessary noise. So what would be much better here is to go to prettier ignore, and yes, I actually have it here already now because I reverted this change together with others. So we've added src components to ignore the folder where shadcn will put its components to not create additional noise. So yarn format check. There are no src components here. If we remove it again, then again, it will try to update all of the components in src components folder. So just a little tip here. Keep in mind though, that if your project uses src components as the standard folder for your custom components in that project, you probably want to think about reorganization or just create a configuration in your consumer project to put components installed with shadcn into some different place and then exclude that place from the pretty ignore. This is to avoid unnecessary conflicts and noise. Now let's talk about customization of the components. So the way shadcn provides you with shadcn UI components, or Dual UI Next provides your consumer projects with custom components from Dual UI Next, is, as we saw in the previous videos, it copies over the files. So customization of a shadcn component or a component delivered by shadcn is no different from customization of your local component. So let's take a look at this in action, and let's try to customize a regular shadcn component. So If you remember, in the previous video, we were working with the standalone Vue 3 application. We've added this duo chat loader component. I've also added back the button that we removed in the previous video. So we will play with this button to see how to customize a standard shadcn component in your consumer project. So when we ran shadcn add button component, it put it into the src components UI button, and the component itself is very simple, right? It's very very trivial. The whole interest of this component is in this index.ts, where we add variants and we play with different utility classes in order to deliver that or another feel of the button. The default button looks like this. That's okay. But the problem is that these variants, they differ from the variants that we use for our buttons in GitLab, right? So variants and categories, we have default, confirm, danger, dashed, link, reset as variants, and then categories, primary, secondary, and tertiary. The categories, we can add the categories as well. Before recording this video, I was trying to understand what is the difference between primary, secondary, and tertiary as a category, and technically it's only in the background colors, which is not so distinct. But we can add a category. Or, you know what? Before we add anything new here, let's play with the variants. So we have default, confirm, danger. Default is here. We can leave it as is, but our default primary doesn't have any background. So we can say that BG should be BG background, and then text foreground. Default button, well, let's close this component. So the default button won't have the default background. It will have the background of the text. It still has this hover because of this primary 90, so it can be a bit more subtle. And the border color isn't very visible, but again, we can fine-tune this. The thing is, for example, let's take the destructive variant. We don't have destructive, we have danger. So let's call it danger here. And now if we would be adding the variant to our button component variant, we would not be able to add destructive as it used to be, right? Technically we can, but the TypeScript will tell you, oh, no. You cannot add destructive, you cannot add arbitrary strings, only those that are defined there. So we will be able to add danger only, which is a great and a nice way when you work with TypeScript. You cannot add arbitrary things there. And here we go. As easy as that, we repurposed the existing danger variant for the standard shadcn UI component to our destructive variant of the standard shadcn component to our own GitLab danger component. Let's play with the outline. Let's do outline. So outline doesn't really look like our dashed, right? So first of all, let's rename it. Dashed. Again, TypeScript error. We have to use dashed here. But still, it looks like the previous outline, right? We need the dashed border, and actually we have to remove the shadow. Probably removing the box shadow, I don't know. Yeah, now it's better visible. So the box shadow for the shadcn components with shadcn buttons is pretty annoying. So we can just start with that. So we remove shadow excess here, shadow excess here, shadow excess here, shadow excess here. And now for the dashed, we should also add border dashed. And here we go. Apparently we need to make the border color more prominent, but you get the idea. You just get into the shadcn component and update it to whatever you want. You add variants. You can add a category. So let's, for the simplicity, let's just add a secondary category. So secondary, and then it will have BG transparent, because that's technically what happens here, right? So in secondary there is no background, on tertiary there is no background as well. So if we take a look here, and if we switch to variant default, for example, let's switch to primary. What's the... Oh, we didn't create the primary. Let's create the primary variant, actually. It is going to be primary, bg primary, and text primary foreground. Primary foreground, and then we save. So we get back to the primary button. It doesn't look like our GitLab button. We will talk about theming in the next video, but for now, let's just use with what is default for, or what is primary for shadcn. Now we can have category here with, what was that? Secondary, right? Category secondary, right. The problem, though, is that in order for this category to be applied, we have to update the component itself. So we have to get into the component. We have to say, okay, the category should be button variants category, and that's right. Category. We have the category here. Class props class, oh, variant size category, and here we go. Our button is gone because we also need to add, where is this? We also need to add the text foreground. Let's make it foreground, and then border, yeah, border will be defined by the variant here, but that's technically how you can customize the standard components from shadcn UI, because they are in your code base. And exactly the same approach is available for the custom components. If in your consumer project you want to update, let's say, do a chat loader for your implementation, you want to make some changes. Let's say you want to write foobar, that I always do. You have foobar here, and that's it. That's how you update the custom components. Then you just do feed fancy updates to components. Oh, nuts. And that's pretty much it, how you can customize components. It's no different from customizing the components that live in your code base of your project. Now, let's talk about an interesting topic. How do you update the components that you have installed? With NPM, when you get the NPM package, in order to update your components, you just update to a new version, right? Upgrade your NPM dependency, and that's how you get the components. How does this work when you have your components locally? Now let's switch to the VS Code again. Let's try to update different components in our Vue 3 project to see how they behave when you get updates from the upstream. So let's get some more space here. And okay, let's start the new one. Let's do npx shadcn shadcn view latest. I think there is the list command here. List. No. Anyway, we can check this just by looking at the thing. So components UI. What components do we have? Okay, we have button and text area components. These are standard shadcn components. We have animated dots, which is the custom component coming from Duo UI Next. So we have pretty good variability here. Let's try to update the text area component. Oh, it's not here. Okay. Let's delete this folder. We don't have text area component, but if you are about to update an unedited, uncustomized shadcn component or a custom component from Duo UI Next, there is no problem. You just update, and when shadcn says that the folder is already existing, whether you want to override or not, you just say yes, I do want. But let's try to update this button component that we have customized at the previous step, right? So latest add button. Now, the folder button already exists. Would you like to override? Now, the question is whether we want to override or not. When shadcn tells you that there is the folder, you have to check into your source control panel of your editor or to do git status and see whether you have any local changes to that folder, to the files in that folder. We don't have anything in the button in this particular moment. We have committed all of our changes. So technically, it's pretty safe to say yes. And what it does, it updates both components because we changed both the index.ts and button view. But now, if you check the source control, you can see what has been changed. Now, and this is the reason why I suggest to exclude the place where shadcn installs its components from Prettifier. In Vue 3 project, Prettifier works automatically, so it replaces double quotes with single quotes. Again, the formatting is different, right? In Duo UI Next, the formatting would be replace the quote, the quotes and put the semicolon. It doesn't happen in the context of the standard Vue 3 project, but still, when we pulled in the component from shadcn, it came with the standard quotes. The Prettifier rules in the Vue project use single quote. Anyway, that's why all of these lines are marked as changed. But here is the thing. This change we've added at the previous stage, and it doesn't come from shadcn UI, right? So we probably want to keep this change. Then we check. Everything else is just standard, and here we have category. So when it comes to the component, to the button component, we do not want the changes coming from the server. We are fine with our category, with our update. So we just discard this change. That's fine. So we know that our button component will continue to work. Let's take a look at the index.ts. Again, the same thing with double quotes, single quotes. But then we have all of these changes that we made locally at the previous stage to add variants, to add category. And they are not part of the standard shadcn UI component, right? So what we want to do is, again, discard these changes. There is nothing new and valuable to our project that would be available in the updated shadcn UI component. That's totally fine. That's what we that's how we resolve the update issue. So you need to update a component, or you know that the component gets some very good updates, then you update it. But that doesn't happen that often. As long as the component works for your project, you just use it, especially when it comes to shadcn UI. Now let's talk about the custom components, and we have one, let's say the animated dots. It's a simple component, but let's assume we don't make any changes to it locally, but we do make changes on the Duo UI next side. So animated dots, not MDX, but animated dots view. Let's say we don't want 3 dots, we want just 1 dot. Okay, where is it? Yes, oh, just 2 dots. Let's say 2 dots. Do we have, let's start yarn start, make sure that nothing is broken, that component still works. Animated dots. So yeah, component works, it's just 2 dots. Okay, that's good. And also we need the storybook. Remember, we need the storybook to run in order to fetch components from its registry. Speaking of which, we actually, after this update, we have to rebuild our registries, both the development registry and the production registry. So we run yarn build. And both registries get updated. Now we go back to our Vue project and we say npx shadcn view latest add, and then remember we have to use the URL, right? So localhost, then this is the dev version that we want to pull in. That's why we have that dev r, and then animated dots.json, right? We do not use .view because the components in the registry are defined as the JSON files. So let's take a look. The folder animated dots already exists. Would you like to overwrite? Again, in order to figure out what is the change, we say yes. We don't have any local changes for the animated dots file. So we say yes, and this file gets updated. We check the change and we say, oh yes, exactly, that's the change that I was waiting for. And we keep this and we say fix updated the animated dots component from Duo UI next. And that's pretty much it. That's how you update the components. It doesn't really matter whether you have local changes or you have, you know what? Let's talk about resolving the conflicts. We have 3 dots locally, but we want to update, and let's call it the temp for now. We have 3 dots in our Vue project's code base. Now we try to update the animated dots again, and we remember that it will come with 2 dots, right? So again, the folder already exists. Would you like to overwrite? Yes, please. We will figure that out. And now we take a look here. Again, all of these things, I probably have to disable automatic predefining of components in Vue in this project. But anyway, all of these changes are just the just semicolons, right? So semicolons. We saw when you update a component from shadcn UI registry, the thing is that they come with double quotes. When you update component from the Duo UI next, it comes with the semicolons. Not work for the Vue 3 standard project, but anyway, all of these are just because of the semicolons, and then here is the main change, right? 2 or 3, and this is exactly what we have to decide here. We can resolve this conflict by just deciding, okay, whether we want to stay on 3 in this particular project, or we will fall back to the standard animated dots component coming from the UI with 2 dots. It's no different from resolving conflicts with Git when you get new updates, from when you rebase, when you merge. It's no different. It's still the code in your code base, and you resolve the conflicts and resolve the problems in exactly the same manner as with any other local file when you pull from the remote. It's different from npm, but it's also simpler than npm, because if npm comes with breaking changes, you have to dig, you have to prepare your code base in order to accommodate those breaking changes. In this particular case, it is very well scoped. The scope is very narrow, and it doesn't take you much time to figure out what is the difference, what to update, what version to stay on. So, in this video, we talked about different tips and tricks and some concerns that people might have about how to use this completely different delivery system other than npm, how to deal with this local conflicts, how to update the local components. But I think this video kind of demystifies the process and reveals that updating the components coming from shadcn or from DoUI Next is no different from resolving conflicts when you pull from remote and there are changes in remote. You just get to your Git. If there are conflicts, you resolve the conflicts. If there are changes, you get the changes. Or you might stay on the version that you have locally for the purpose of your project. So it is very simple and easy to understand, because we all know how Git works, and that's exactly what happens with shadcn delivery system when you need to update the components. See you in the next video, where we are going to talk about theming.